Members of the Ohio State football family this week, Nick Mangold and Bob Maggs, both had major impacts on this program, and we're praying for their family to have peace during this time. Very, very sad, and I think the plan is to have a moment of silence at the. Those families know that we're all.
Ryan, I imagine you're probably familiar with Ethan Runkemeyer from him growing up around here. Just how much did you recruit Ethan, and what is your impression from his quarterback?
Yeah, I think he's a very talented young man. He's, anybody you speak to up in the Olentangy High School or in the area growing up, he's got a great family. He's a great leader, and very competitive player that has a bright future in the game. And this is just his second start, but you can see the talent on the field. You can see that he's got leadership skills, and he obviously had a great career here while he was in high school, and think very, very highly of him.
Ryan, since February last year to February of this past year, you lost 4 assistant coaches in 4 different ways, 4 different timelines, 4 different circumstances. Is there any processes or anything that you've changed internally to make sure those conversations are open? How do you prepare for that, knowing that you're the program that a lot of people are trying to emulate?
Yeah, just keep winning and continue to have opportunities is the goal, and that's part of the understanding of being unselfish, whether it's players or coaches. And we know that when we're unselfish and we win as a team, there's great opportunity for everybody in their careers, and that's a good thing. We want to make it great for guys to stay in the program, players and coaches, and retain as many people as we can, knowing that 100% is unrealistic. But that's why we want continuity. That's why we want stability. I think that's a big focus for us right now, to make sure that we have that, because in a day and age when you're just seeing a lot of changes in the game right now. I think you've heard a lot of coaches get up and say, there's been a lot of changes. The college landscape has changed with NIL, with transfer portal. Well, I think you're seeing that on the field now. You're seeing teams that maybe haven't been, historically in the top 10 or top 15 that now are in the top 10, top 15. And so all of the changes that have happened in terms of roster building, roster management, and things like that are now happening on the field. And it's just, a reflection of that. And so, we want to make sure that we're retaining all of our players and all of our coaches, so that it is it's an edge for us against our competitors.
We've heard a lot of the players talk about Matt Patricia and kind of their relationship that they had. A lot of guys like Jalen McClain, Peyton Pierce, just talk about how immediately they were able, since day one he came in, to get that relationship with him. What have you thought about the way that he stepped in and kind of bonded with some of the guys? And he talked on the radio show that they're younger than what he's used to coaching. Why do you think he's been able to gel with them so well?
I mean, everybody has their own style, and I think when he got in here, he had a certain list of things that he wanted to get done early on, and I think he's done that. He's let his personality go, which has been great. And each year you have a different set of dynamics at play, coaches and players, and story. So. I think he understands more than anybody that the season's just begun now. We're just getting started here. We've had the first half of the year, and that's great. But this is what really matters. And his history of coaching in the NFL, helps him give some perspective to everybody of just how long of a run this is. Those of us who went through it last year, that's one thing. But he's done it for multiple years, and you got to keep building each week. And I know that he understands that, and he's continuing to talk to the staff and the players about that as well.
Ryan, when you've gone to using multiple fronts on defense and having those different looks, how much of that was being able to have somebody and use somebody like Rivalry and Hill's skill set, or was it, I guess, how does that dovetail with somebody like his skill set?
In terms of what we're doing?
Yeah, because when you were talking about you wanted to use multiple fronts, and have more versatility up front, and in the back of your mind was the fact that you had somebody like Arvell on the roster who would fit into that idea.
Yeah, I think you always want to put the best players you can on the field to do their job the best they can. So what does that mean? Well, I think sometimes you recruit to certain schemes, but then you also want to make sure you're doing things that put guys in situations that can be successful. And what I mean by that is if somebody is a really, really good football player but maybe a non-fit schematically, do you add them to the team? And I think you always want to acquire talent the best you can. It's the coach's job to put them in a position to be successful. So last year we had, Jack, JT, Ty, and Tyleek, and it was 4 down, and that's kind of what it looked like most of the plays. Now you're seeing, different guys with different skill sets who can do versatile things, and Arvell's one of those guys, and our coaches are making sure that we're putting those guys in those positions. So that in was important because, he had a history of doing that.
Coach, when you look at Penn State, obviously not going the way they had hoped, but at the start of the year ranked number 2 in the country, they've got talented guys on that team. How do you convey that to your kids that, and every week we see chaos?
Yeah, well, it's already been conveyed to them, and it'll continue to be conveyed. We have a 2:30 meeting here, as you know. Tuesdays are a big day. We'll go through, what we think in terms of all 3 phases, but we know that this is, one of the top 5-10 teams in the country. I don't think there's many teams in the country that have more talent than Penn State has. And I think people recognize that early in the season. Sure, it hasn't gone the way they've wanted it to, but that doesn't change that they still have really good players. And when you looked at this game, a few months ago, I mean, it was an absolute matchup game. That has not changed. It's still the same players other than the quarterback. They understand that, and they know that it's about us. It's not about our opponent. And they have a lot of NFL players, and we know they have really good coaches. So all of that's going to lead into a huge matchup game for us on Saturday.
You face a team that's also coming off of a bye week, a team that really needs to find a way to win a game. Is there an element of expecting the unexpected in a way? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, they really have a nothing to lose mentality. So, we have to be on high alert at all times for things. They have 2 weeks to put together different things on offense, defense, and special teams that they haven't put on film. We know that. And certainly when you have a coaching change like they did, we expect that. So, that mentality going into the game. And so all of those things matter. At the end of the day, you still got to go play the play. And what our opponent is, and the fact that they've had 2 weeks to prepare and change up the looks.
Yeah, Ryan, during the off week, what were your evaluations of right guard spot, and what do you think that looks like in performance in 22?
Well, I think that Josh Padilla has continued to practice well. When he's gotten to games, he's played well. He's not perfect, and so we feel like he has an opportunity to mix in there as the 6th offensive lineman in the game, like he's been in the last few games. We'll continue to evaluate it this week and figure out what gives us the best chance to win. But he certainly has played into one of our top 6 players.
Ryan, this summer where Larry mentioned that the challenge of replacing 4 NFL starters kind of like re-energized him coming into the season. I'm curious in what ways you've seen that from him, and if you think that's trickled down to his room and kind of helped him step up the way they have.
Well, I think for him, the style of defense is just a little bit different, so I think it's given him a little bit of a challenge to learn something new. You're seeing it's not just all 4 down front, although you still see a lot of 4 down front, so there's still so many things that he teaches that's the same way that it's been his whole career. But he's also getting challenged in other areas, and I think for him it's exciting because it is something a little new, and where he's at in his career, there's so many things that he can bring to the table, but also pick up in terms of new ideas and thoughts, and I think to your point, it has re-energized them.
Ryan, you have not seemed overly concerned or panicked about the run game. It's been a big topic of conversation outside this building. And you mentioned something a couple weeks ago about maybe not scheming up explosives that I thought was interesting. But also, like, the base plays could hit. What would be your level of concern or optimism about where the run game's going right now?
Well, like, you know, I say it all the time. At every play, we want to score a touchdown on. So every play should be an explosive in my mind. And when we're out at the practice field and on the scout team and it doesn't go for an explosive, it's like, why? Something broke down. So our execution level has got to increase just across the board. And so, yeah, there's always the balance of, you try to create explosives and then you put yourself at risk of turnovers. And controlling the ball, making sure, you're playing to your defense, all those things come into play. We know that, we're going to have to be explosive on offense and figure out ways to do that. And so I think, during the bye week, we've been able to look at the things that we've done well and the areas we got to get better at. Everybody's involved with the run game. It's not an easy thing. And, I think, it's been good. Has it been great? No, it hasn't been great. We can get better. I think that's everybody involved, including, the quarterback, the receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, and obviously the offensive line. So all areas that we want to get better at in terms of being explosive, being efficient. But, I say to the running backs a lot, like the first 4 yards are for the team, and then the rest of it, you got to go trust your God-given ability. And so, some of the things in the last game, they put an extra guy in the box, and the RPO led us to throw the ball. Those don't show up in the running statistics, but when you have a quarterback who has the ability to run, you saw him pull. We read an end. We'll do some more of that with Julian. But he also can read some off the line defenders, and so like when you look, they're leaving one-on-one on the outside and put an extra guy in the box, and we're hitting, an 8-yard hitch to Jeremiah. That's really the run game, because it complements. So to answer your question, yeah, it's been good. It hasn't been great. We need to get better at it. We want to create more explosives.
Bye weekend, I saw on Facebook that you went through a corn maze of your image. Two-part, can you confirm that's not one of these AI Ryan Day Facebook pics? And two, where does walking through a corn maze of your own image one to I finally made it?
Well, I've read a lot of things on the internet, AI, that are not true. So I would say that it's hitting about 20%, but that actually is true. We actually that's been something we've been doing as a family yearly, and the folks out there at the corn maze had said, every year they do a corn maze and they use somebody different. It was Jack Nicholas one year. They've done Ohio State theme for however many years, and they said, you win a national championship, then we'll do one of you. And so they held up their end of the bargain. So we went out there for a little while. I tried to be normal as a family. It wasn't normal because the kids were throwing corn at each other when we were in the maze and everything else. But but it was great. It's great to do things like that when we're in the Woody during the season, just to get away even for a couple hours, because, we call it the submarine right here. Like, this is where we are. We don't go out in public. We don't do much. But to hear the people there talk about how, we're glad that Ohio State's on a bye week because we got a lot more people here than when they're playing, on Saturdays, there's nobody here. And it's a great opportunity to get an idea of kind of, how important football is in the community. But yeah, it was good to get a little bit of perspective walking away at least for a couple hours anyways. I didn't do the haunt though. Although I did a couple years ago, and we were going through the haunt, and it's quite an experience. And at one point, somebody with a mask jumps up right here, and they're like, "Coach Day?" I was like, man, I got to get the heck out of here. So I said, I'm going to pass this year, let the kids do it, and Nina and I waited. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Just wanted to ask if you had the opportunity to meet Nick Mangold. I know you talked about it earlier in the press conference, but if not, maybe stories you've heard about him. Just more thoughts.
Yeah, I have an unbelievable amount of respect for him as a man and as a football player. And we talk about leaving legacies behind. When you hear that name in this building right here, people stand up straight. This is a guy who had a tremendous amount of character and, left a lot of that behind. He didn't just go through this place. He left a work ethic. He left a leadership. He left a discipline, and certainly a body of work on the field. And I know, everybody in Buckeye Nation is mourning his loss, and then obviously what he did in the NFL, and just all the people that were able to have him as a teammate speak so highly of him, and so he's going to be dearly missed.
Ryan, it seemed like against Wisconsin that Isaiah West gave you some of the better yards after contact and make you miss kind of stuff that you've gotten so far this year. How much can a back work on that kind of stuff during the season, and how much of it is just sort of you got it or you don't?
I think it's a good question. It's our job as coaches to figure that out right there, and so we try to create drills. We watch it on film. We look to work it in the body of a practice, of a thud, of an inside drill. When do you make somebody miss? When do you drop your shoulder, run them over? What are the tools that the coaches are giving you in order to do a good job of yards after contact? And that's sort of how you're judged as a running back. Not 100%, but that's a big part of it. And I think we're getting better in that area. We're drilling it more, and we want to see that more on the film.
Kind of a two-part thing here. For starters, when did you realize Knowles was probably not coming back here, and then kind of building off of that? This is your fourth defensive coordinator hire, and you've always mentioned this idea of making sure you have the right guys in the right seats. There's the best guys, but this is Ohio State, you're typically going to get that. But that understanding of what your defense needs for that period of time when there's a lack of leadership, what that team needs versus what when you hired Halfley versus hiring Kerry Combs, Jim Knowles, and now Matt Patricia, that thought process, that philosophy of going about it that way.
You learn every year. Every year, what have you learned the most? One of the top three things is when you make you'd make decisions based on a recruit or two, or maybe the public sentiment, where you got to do what's best for your team, and I think continuity is important, but we also got to do what's best. But there also is another part of it too. And the guys have to feel like you're doing everything you possibly can to make sure, you're bringing in the best guy to help them. And, whether it is like, you talk about fans, you talk about the boosters, you talk about people in the building, you talk about parents of recruits, you talk about the players, their parents, like everybody has opinions on all those things. And nowadays people can decide to come and go, through the transfer portal. So we have to take all those things into consideration when we're making a hire. But at the end of the day, we have to make the best hire for Ohio State, period. And I watched, Coach Saban was really good at it, in my opinion. All of those great runs here, he would have guys the next one, and I'm sure he would say some were better than others, but making sure that in that moment we're not rushing in to make a decision. And I think you saw that there was a lag time between when Jim left and when we hired Matt, where I think a lot of people were like, man, he's going to hire one here pretty soon, but it left us in a tough spot because the spring cycle was already sort of done, and so it was so late. But the fact that Matt was available, man, it ended up being a home run. And so just being thorough and making sure we're doing what's right by the players. I think getting some of their feedback is important. Talking to Caleb, talking to Sonny, what do you guys think about this? And then the last part, which is probably the most important part, is getting the feedback of the assistant coaches. Because, Tim, James, Larry, Matt, they have to work with whoever this guy is who comes in. And that's probably the part that maybe isn't getting recognized enough, because, yeah, Jim did a great job last year. Matt's doing a great job this year. But what's the common denominator? Those coaches and the players. So I think we have the best defensive coaching staff in America, and I think sometimes, they don't get recognized enough. Not that, we're in it to get recognized, but those guys have put the work in behind the scenes, and they're doing a great job. So it's a long answer, but that's kind of some of the things that went into it.
Kind of another question along those lines. You're going against Jim Knowles, obviously, who was successful here. But even if Matt Patricia is even better, what is it about him schematically, what he's done schematically, and what is it maybe in terms of his personality of building chemistry and a bond with players that's enabled that to happen?
Well, I think it's all the above, and we still have a lot of football to play. So the story's yet to be told, but it's not easy to do, but you have to build a certain level of credibility because of his past and his resume. But when he came in and he let his personality go and he connected with the people in the building, I think that's, early on what gave him some early wins. And then, we played well early in the season, and there was belief there, and then there was confidence built in. And so, that combined with Sonny, Caleb, KJ, Caden, IGB, guys who had been it before that can bring guys along and make them better, which I think player when they make others better. And I think that has had a huge the Caleb, he feels stronger. They feel stronger together. When Arvell's next to Sonny, he feels stronger. Now that we're halfway through the season, I think that we know what we have with these guys, and they have confidence, and now they're bringing other people along. But then the other part of it is the staff, and these guys work hard, and Matt puts together the plan and does a great job, but those are the guys that are, on the front lines.
When you prepare for a defense with the coordinator that you're familiar with, how valuable is the self-scouting you've done in years past and helping you game plan for that? Is it valuable at all? Can you still put a lot of stock into that at all?
Yeah, we look at everything, and I know they do too. And so sometimes when you have so many years against somebody, you have so much stuff that you can get yourself distracted. It's going to come down to fundamentals in this game, as we know. He will definitely have some curveballs. He always does. So we have to identify what those are early on and then go from there.
Dom asked you earlier about sort of the mental preparation for this Penn State team. You guys this season have kind of gone about your business every week. You've talked about it, but it would be easy as the defending national champions, 7-0, all this, for guys to have a letdown. Why has that not happened week in, week out?
Well, the first thing about football is you only have so many opportunities. So, we have 12 that are guaranteed. That's it. And we work really hard around here to have those opportunities. And these guys have worked their entire life for these opportunities. And nothing's guaranteed in life. If we didn't learn anything from this past week, nothing's guaranteed. So, we have to live every day like it's our last game. That's the way we have to look at it. And so we have to be in the moment, and we have to master the process of week in and week out. And the test is on Saturday. And so you've heard me say it before, again, not flashy, but being disciplined enough to continually do it week in and week out and being consistent. So that's the message. Not easy, but I think our guys are up for the challenge. But it all comes down to the way we train. That's why 2 hours from now we got to have a great meeting. We got to get going. We got to have a great practice, and then we'll get an idea what's going to happen this week. But we have to continue to upgrade as players. We have to upgrade as coaches. We have to upgrade as teams, in terms of offense, defense, and special teams. And then we have to continue to play really, really hard. And that's it. There's nothing, magical about it. And people are going to say, what's the key to this game? Well, taking care of the football, stopping a run, running the ball. Those things aren't changing. It's a society that wants something new, wants something that's flashy, but it's those things that are going to make the difference in the end. So we have to keep bringing it to the table every week and be consistent.
When you look at Kane McDonald and his ability to stop the run this year, how helpful has that been on this defensive line? You needed someone to step up there, and it really seems like he's taking that on.
Yeah, he's growing each week. I think he still has a high ceiling. I think he still could be an even more productive player, but you're seeing the capability there, and you're seeing him become more consistent. And like we said, great defenses are built from inside out, and he's a big part of our defense. We know that. He knows that. And so we need that consistency out of him. But you guys see the potential just like we do. And, but again, the exciting thing is he's not tapped out, and he's been a huge part of us so far, and now we really need him down the home stretch, and he has the ability to be a game wrecker.
How would you describe your relationship with Jim Knowles, and how would you describe this program's relationship with Jim Knowles as you get to go against a guy who's in this building for 3 years?
Yeah, when, like any relationship, when it breaks off, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but there really hasn't been much communication. He did a great job when he was here. helped us win a national championship, and kind of left it at that. And then it was, hey, we got to go make a replacement and move on from there. So, yeah, that's kind of how it is. And it was abrupt, but we certainly respect the work that he did when he was here.
Coaches move on, but is it any different when he goes down the road to a Big Ten rival as opposed to some other job?
I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, just about how college football and how it's changed, and the money and everything like that. It's just you're seeing some things that maybe we're not used to. But I guess when you look at the NFL, you see more of that than you would in college. But I guess we're getting more like the NFL. So we try not to take those things personal, but we are human.
Ryan, you mentioned wanting to see recognition for your coaches. The coaching carousel right now is speeding up. It's 2 months earlier than you'd probably like to see it. So you do have coaches being recognized in terms of being thrown around there. How does that impact you and day-to-day game planning with coaches? How do you keep it from impacting that? And can you anymore expect to return your coordinators year after year?
I mean, I hope so. That's the goal. But you don't know. You don't know what's coming next. It makes you wake up a couple minutes earlier every day and stay up a little later. That's just the reality of it. But this is the world we live in, and there's nothing better. It's the most competitive environment there is in the entire world, and get your blood flowing every day. And it's great to be around these guys. And we say it all the time, like, it's a privilege to be a part of this, man. You're relevant. You're in the middle of it all. Let's go. And I want to make sure our players, our coaches, everybody doesn't look back in 10 years, 20 years and say, man, like, those are the best times in our lives, and we were worried about X, Y, and Z. No. Just go out there and play, man. Be the most prepared team in the country and go enjoy it. And enjoying is winning, So I think we have the ability right now to focus on the task at hand, and that right now is Penn State. It's all about the Nittany Lions. And these games against Penn State have always been a battle. It was a battle last year, and it's going to be a battle this year. So, but we knew that when we saw the schedule. Like, okay, we're not going to circle opponents on our schedule, but we know that one's going to be a battle. And it's a matchup game that we're going to have to bring it at home. So we also need the fans. I think our fans have been great this year, but we got to be at our best. They got to be at their best. Make it as hard as possible and make it a really difficult environment for them to operate in.
Coach, just the running back position, you've got Isaiah West kind of coming on there, it feels like, here mid-season. I assume, as you'll say, you're going to go out to practice today and see who's most productive and those kind of things and figure out the reps. But do you have a pretty good feel about what you guys are going to be able to do with that collection of backs going into this game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we'll go through the week and figure out what gives us the best chance. But we have really good backs. They have really good backs. And I think that's another way to look at some of these matchup games is, are you running harder than their backs? And are they running harder than us? If so, why? So I think their backs are very good. Both of them, run really, really hard, and we need to do the same thing with our guys. So we'll keep looking at it. I mean, we do have some young backs. I think that they're growing every day and building, but to say we have like a veteran guys like we did last year, we know exactly what we have week in and week out is probably not accurate. So these guys got to have a great week and then go out and prove themselves on Saturday, and that's it.
Ryan, college players can gamble on pro sports now, and I just wonder, since that's passed, what guidance, advice have you given your players on that, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, we have yearly we have a huge talk about gambling. Gambling is really one of the hot topics every year. We try to identify as a staff the top 4 or 5 things that we think can jam our players up and distract them or get themselves off track, and one of them is gambling. It's just completely changed, and I think that's another part of this game that's changed. The fans, the people who are gambling on the game, and then they're even more vested than they've ever been before, because not only is their team winning or losing, but they're winning or losing financially. So there's a lot that comes with that. And so we talk to our guys a lot about that part of it. It used to be that you were not allowed to bet on a sport where there was an NCAA championship. Now that's changed. So the message hasn't changed in terms of that part of it, and it's a losing proposition, as we know. But we try to post as many. CJ Barnett right now, you'll see in our locker room a bunch of articles about some of the stuff that's gone on most recently about people getting jammed up with that. We try to post them to make our guys aware. It's just one area that we try to educate our players. We do a lot more of that in the off season, but it is a good reminder during the bye week.
Thanks, Mike. Follow up real quick on that thing about your assistant coaches. It's not my real question, but do you require them to?
Fake question.
Yeah, you require them to alert you when they're being contacted. Is there like a I don't know, respect thing going on there? Just let me know what's up. I mean,
yeah.
How does that work? Because obviously, like was said, a lot of guys are getting their names bandied.
Yeah, it's about, you know, everyone has their, you know, their name and their character and how they want to handle things. And, you know, I try to do what's right by, you know, assistant coaches. When you hire somebody, you try to call the coach. It's not always as linear as you'd like to think. There's a lot of dynamics at play, and it doesn't always work exactly the way you want to. But yeah, I think our guys have always done a good job of communicating. If there's things out there, they communicate to me just to let me know. You know, I'm always, you know, understanding in terms of those types of things. But we have a job to do here, you know, and it's mid-season, and we got, you know, those guys got to make sure they stay focused. And I've been through that before too. But the bottom line is, if you want to get a really good job, just do a really good job at the one you're at, and a lot of good things will happen.
Maybe they'll wait till the middle of January, right? No, I'm just messing. This team's APR has never been higher. You look at this defense and the changes that have been made, it looks a lot different in some ways than last year and stuff. Is that a product, like you were talking about Patricia and the coaches, but also the, I don't know, the IQ of the players that you have? And do you actively, how do you identify IQ in a football player? And you think y'all have done a pretty good job of that?
Yeah, we want to be tough, but we also want to be smart. And yeah, if you want to know how disciplined somebody is, you know, look at their grades. You know, see how they're doing. You know, are they tardy for class? It's not always how it works. You know, there's some guys who don't get great grades who are really football smart. But, you know, we do look at those things. And we want guys to do well in the classroom, because we feel like how you do one thing is how you do everything. You know, if you're taking care of, we do meetings weekly and go through everybody in a building who has interaction with our players. We go through them, and our academic folks will give a trend on our players. And typically how they're doing in the classroom is how they're doing on the field. It's not 100%, but pretty darn close. Oh, he was late for a meeting, he missed an assignment, and then you get to the football coach, he says, yeah, he's not doing very well. He missed an assignment on play 3, and he's not finishing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, nope, he was on time, everything's in order, he got a great grade, he's prepared, he shows up on time, does all his work, and then by the time you get to the coach, he's doing great. He shows up in meetings, takes great notes, and you know, knows what he's doing on the field, got a great attitude. Then you get to Coach Marotti. Yep, he's there early. He's disciplined in his weight training. Then you get to the training staff. Yes, he's there early, gets his treatment, gets his recovery, leaves on time. He's good to work with in the training room, like all of those. Understand that they need everybody in the building. And I think it's the player's job to make sure that they endear themselves to everybody in the Woody. And it's our job to make sure that we surround them with the best of the best and to try to build these players up to maximize themselves. And so all that goes into play to make sure we're bringing the right people. Yep, you got it. Thanks.